up, YouTube? Natsu Team FTNatsu back for video that's kind of something different. I was thinking of videos I want to do, and I thought I'd make a top 10 video. So this is my top 10 decks or rather, this is more mine and Ascriptmaster's. Like, we were talking about like what we consider to be the top 10 decks right now, like with set G4 coming right now in like about 2 weeks. So these are in no particular order, mainly because we couldn't decide an order. The only thing we could agree on was that this was the best deck. So FTNatsu Diablo. A lot of people know what the deck is. It's the deck's been tearing up stuff, tearing up your locals. This has been the card that's haunting your nightmares. So FTNatsu Diablo, you all know what it does. The effects on screen: Counterblast 1, Persona Flip. It gains, if you have 2 more in your G zone, it gets 10,000 power and crit. And also, you can, when it attacks, if you kill 3 rear guards, and your opponent has to either kill 2 of their rear guards, or if they can't, then they can't. They just can't guard, period, from their hand. Well, I mean, unless you're playing gold Paladin, G-Gold Paladin, and you happen to check one of the perfect guards from your deck, non-G perfect guard, of course. You're not guarding this deck. Anyways, makes this unit really, really dangerous, or makes this deck really, really dangerous, is that there are about 2 different ways you can play it. You can either play with the, are 2 main ways that people will play it. They're the Revenger builds, which revolve around Phantom Blaster Abyss, and for the life of me, I can't get his name, but, he is a grade 2 Revenger card that when you Legion, you counterblast 1, and your Legion and your Vanguard gets the skill. Your opponent has to kill a rear guard. If not, they can't guard the attack. So, and it's a grade 2, so it's searchable by Mordred. So you can end up getting some seriously high, insane powers on your Phantom Blaster Abyss that will gain the skill twice if you have 2, making it into a very, very deadly card. Also, the deck has. Some who don't really know the deck may think, oh, what about Counterblast? It has Dorant, which is also searchable through Mordred, and so it can easily get over a lot of the Counterblast costs, as you can pretty much unflip your damage 4 times with your Blaster Dark Avengers, allowing for you to not have to worry too much about your Counterblast. Then there is the Phantom Blaster Break Ride / Phantom Blaster Overlord / Phantom Blaster Abyss variant. That deck is also very, very strong. Using if you're running the Phantom Blaster Overlord version, you basically can use the new Dorant and Claudius combo to unflip a lot of your damage, and to take advantage of the new stuff from the Legend deck, as well as also being able to use cards like Maka to use Blackwing Swordbreaker and Karen in order to either in Blackwing Swordbreaker to draw cards, or Karen to lower the amount of units you actually have to sacrifice for Phantom Blaster Diablo and Phantom Blaster Overlord. Or rather, Phantom Blaster Dragon's Break Ride ability, which, if you don't know, basically makes Phantom Blaster Overlord, all you have to do is discard a copy, since it will unflip your damage, so you can immediately reflip it, or if you want, you can flip it and then unflip it, however you want to go about it, depending on what your damage is. So, another really, really strong contender, I think Ascriptmaster want to put this at 2, but I haven't, but I wasn't sure where I wanted to rank this deck with Sanctuary Guard. This is probably more of a surprise to a lot of people, but this deck is actually a very, very strong deck. If you played, since I've been playing pretty much since Set 6 came out in the US, or actually I've been playing before when Set 1, but I was playing with the Japanese meta. That's a whole discussion another time. The popular Royal Paladin build was Alfred build, because Alfred was a toolbox card that could counterblast you to get any unit, and you could easily sort of toolbox your field in. But then we got the Daigo deck, which gave a Sanctuary Guard Dragon, and then that became the new toolboxing deck. And we got a Stride, and then we got more cards, so it's evolved into what we have now. Where Sanctuary Guard, we can get a consistent feel, because on ride, as you can see on screen, on ride, you discard a card from your hand, you get any grade 1 Royal Paladin, you call it to your rear guard circle, And the limit break ability, it gains 3k power for every grade 1 or less Royal Paladin rearguard. So basically, the basic concept is to ride him, discard any card, and then you get your limit break enabler to instantly get, at minimum, that plus 3k. So if you have it behind your Vanguard, you instantly have a 21k column, which I'm gonna say that's kind of standard now for a lot of days, a lot of things now. Just simple if you're for your non since usually for most part your gem break units will either get you something like that on turn, but there aren't very many gem break 2 unit decks that are doing like insanely well right now. I think there's only one actually, but yeah. So and also they have a stride unit which gives 3k, which gives basically your entire front row 3k for every grade 1 you have. So that in turn gives your entire front row 9k power, which allows your front row to hit for very, very high numbers. And once again, it's Royal Paladin, so you're calling from your deck, but you're choosing what you call from your deck. You're calling from like your entire deck. It's not like Gold Paladin where you just call from your top 3 or your top 4. So it's very easy to build a consistent field with it. Also with the with Royal Paladin with Royal Paladin being one of those decks that a main character plays on Vanguard G, it's one of those clans that you know is going to continue to get more and more support. Next we have the Lambros build, like Phantom Blaster Overlord, or not Phantom Blaster Diablo. This is another stride unit that's kind of been just wrecking the meta. Not wrecking the meta, but it's been doing very, very well. Once again, there are all 2 ways you can go about it. You can either go with Thavas as your grade 3, which has the Silent Tom with crit skill, which isn't as deadly, but the idea usually is that they're gonna end up wasting all their perfect guards on your G units. So that way, then you can straight up finish them off with crit, which is actually not as bad as that people may think it is, because some people, or actually quite a lot of people, like to sit at 4 damage, and this way you can be like, no, you're going to sit at 4 damage, my attack will still kill you anyway. And then the other build, of course, is the Maelstrom build, with Lambros just kind of thrown in. So Lambros lets you stand your rear guards, and it's an insured stand, which is nice, and also it gives your rear guards 10,000 power. You can stand an entire column, you can stand both sides of your rear guards column if you want to do it. It for sure gets you those extra attacks, and if you run units like Valeria and Algos, Valeria being on a 4th attack or greater on hit retire, and Algos being a 4th attack or greater on hit draw, it really helps add the pressure with those attacks, forcing your opponent to once again drop more and more guard. The idea being that it doesn't matter how much guard you have, I'm just going to keep attacking you until you die, essentially. Then we have the other major Royal Paladin build, Seeker of Thingsaver Dragon. Not to say that, the Seeker build, just Thingsaver has so many variants, it would be hard to say, no. I think the most popular build is the Jewel Knight build, most like. Although that's not my build, I run the Altmana build. But both builds are still pretty good. Each has their own sort of bonuses. The Jewel Knight build, I'm going to talk more about the Jewel Knight build, which basically it basically runs full Jewel Knight triggers, with the exception of Margle, and then also running Sword Me, which basically is on call, a special counterblast 1, and then you grab a grade 1 or less Jewel Knight from your deck to your field. So essentially, it can make your column 16k consistently without you needing to drop any cards from your hand. And then you also have a pseudo restander, where you can, if you have enough soul, which can easily and quite consistently get you 3 22k Vanguard attacks in one turn, which is requesting at minimum 45k guard from your opponent, not factoring in either rear guards, boosts from a booster for your Vanguard, nothing. And it generates a lot of easy advantage for your opponent that can easily overwhelm them. And even that, and it also can deal with a lot of the retiring that can happen, especially now with Blaster Abyss. Dragonic Burnout is a very popular retire card. Next, continuing with Try 3, is the Ronculus build. This build is not insane, but it's amazing that 2 cards pretty much took it not almost to next level. It's because it was already popular enough with the Maiden of Flower screen and Lemon Slice and Sour Slice or Lemon Slice or whatever the heck you want to call it combo, where basically you have 5 Lemon Slicers, so they all gain an extra 4k power, and then you combine with Jingle Flower to get your power numbers even higher, and then once you finish striding, you still had Asha's skill, which gave them all 5k power as in addition to whatchamacallit. In addition to their 1k power from their own effects. But 2 new units came out, are coming out in G-Set 4, which is Saliana, who is On Call, Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1. If you have a Ronculus Vanguard, then you can clone one of your cards, which is really good because it lets you're not dependent on just using Ronculus to clone. And also, it's another way for the deck to go plus, which is a big issue that the deck had before, where it was a very, very fragile build. And there's also Via now, too, who lets you put 3 units from your drop zone back into your deck. 3 normal units. Not 3 units. Putting back triggers would be too good. Which, to then sort of mini Jingle Flower your opponent, which got really, really, even though it was once per turn, but it got really, really insane if you get 3 Vias out, because you basically would have 3 16k attackers if you had enough for it. If you had enough cards in your drop zone for it. And also, it lets you put, so like if your opponent retires one of your loan cards, you can put it back in your deck and then re-clone it out again. So it allowed the deck to get over the big weakness it had where basically if you could retire their stuff, then they wouldn't have enough names left, since Maiden of Flower screen is a thing right now for the US meta, but it's a promo, so it's a lot. It can end up being a lot to invest in. And same with Lemon Slicer, although Lemon Slicer is not going to be reprinted like Maiden of Flower screen, but with Via out, Lemon Slicer is less needed. Via is definitely one of the more better options, but Lemon Slicer is not like, it's not like right now in the US where you have to, like, you need Lemon Slicer. The next deck, I actually forgot about this deck, but it's a very, very dangerous, Machining. So Machining is what, no, okay, that's kind of true. Machining is what the leaders wish they were. That may sound kind of mean. Even though the leaders still have the offensive property of deleting, which tried existing, the defensive ability aspect of deleting is non-existent anymore. Anyway, Machinings really have going for them is just straight up paralyzing the Vanguard. That's very, very dangerous because this Bushiroad stride ruling of no. If you stride on top of rested Vanguard, your stride unit is rested, which can make the opponent be unable to do anything. They even have their stride unit is Raging Spear Mutant Deity Sun Beetle. It is a hefty cost of Counterblast 2 and Persona Flip, but it straight up stuns all of your opponent's cards, including their Vanguard, and they can't ride. So if you don't mind using up almost all your Counterblast, you can stun them for 2 turns, which is pretty devastating. Not being able to do anything for 2 turns, I mean, not really. And then all their rear guards are stunned, so if they want to even, I mean, yeah, they can intercept with their front rows, but even then, their front rows are, most of the rear guards I'm going to have is going to be like 12k unless they want to call over their stuff. But that also sucks for them too, because then they're depleting their hand to just try and do something to you. It's and also a big issue with the deck is there's not a lot of ways to play around it. I mean, the only deck that even remotely has some decent matchup against it is probably Aquaforce, simply because Aquaforce does have their stand triggers, that a lot of that players run. Although some Aqua Force decks don't even run stands anymore. But yeah, that's also a very, very, very strong deck. Next up, a lot of people might feel this deck isn't as good anymore, but I strongly disagree. Is the Gigantic Overlord deck. There are many ways to build it. You can either just build for the X for the end. I do 3 the N, 3 the X, 2 the Great. But this deck's still pretty strong. It got the Ace card, which is Counterblast 2, Persona Flip, and then basically you after you attack an opponent's Vanguard, you can discard a card in your hand and an Overlord card, and it can restand. It does lose triple drive and goes to twin drive, but it's still a reshirt and restander. So unlike the X, where generally it's gonna be the turn you Legion, if you're not you usually depending on your opponent though, get the restand from the end once. It lets you restand again, which is also always very, very dangerous. The deck also has Gigantic Burnout, which lets you retire your opponent's cards. So so you can easily disrupt a lot of field, which is a thing that a lot of decks still. Although resist is a thing for certain units, not everything will have resist. So you can still do a lot of field disruption with that, which can really hurt certain decks, like Shadow Paladin can be hurt by that, depending on what you can end up retiring, as well as Aqua Force and Royal Paladin too. Sometimes, if you're able to retire fast enough, depending on your build, sometimes they can't keep up. Next up is, in my opinion, the most underrated deck, which is Brawlers. So Brawlers have their new stride, which is Counterblast 1, Soul Blast 1, and just choose a face down card from your G zone and turn it face up. And so long as you have a Big Bang Knuckle Heart, which basically, if you're running Brawlers, you're basically running the two of them, the 2 Big Bang cards. For every, basically, if you're in Legion, or if you were in Legion when you strode, you could attack your opponent's entire field, and for each every copy in your G zone, you get 5,000 power. But no one cares. No one's gonna guard anything aside from the Vanguard. Like, let's rear ahead. The deck's really, really strong though. The deck is one of the it's the only deck in this list that actually has a cross ride, which, I mean, we have a lot of more ways to deal with cross rides with 12k attackers, because then you can still make the 10k guard column with 6k, even a 6k grade 1 unit. So we still have a lot of ways to deal with it, but it's still definitely, it very much comes in handy, being able to be a 13k defense, since certain decks can't hit it's harder to hit the bigger numbers, because generally now we have 10k boosters and things like that, so we can hit 31 or whatever, 21 with our Vanguards, but not a lot of decks can actually dish out the 15k guard needed from a cross-ridden unit without the help of triggers or something else like that, aside from striding. But yeah, this deck's still very, very strong. It punch out field easily, and even decks like Shadow Paladin and Royal Paladin, those decks are gonna have a hard time keeping up like their toolbox field out if you just keep punching it out every turn. It's very difficult to deal with. Another deck that also this deck isn't underrated at all is Regalia. They got a huge boost with Mystic Beast Hadi, which is it's the unit where it gets 1k every time a card is soul blast, for every card that's soul blasted out of your soul. So it can turn into a 13k booster, which with Yggdrasil makes your Vanguard 36k attack, which is very, very dangerous, because that's already 36k grade zeros only. 2 of those, and your opponent's not going to really be able to do too much to you there. The deck also got Dreaming Dragon, which is a stand trigger that lets you put all the cards in your drop zone back into your deck. So, soul charging your entire deck away, as long as it hits the drop zone, isn't as big a concern. And also, you're just still a very good card. Um, a lot of the support that it has, especially in the form of Norn and I can't remember his name, but he's the stand trigger that basically has Norn's effect. It's still very strong. It's just basically blocking out grade ones is still a very strong thing in the game to do. And also with the ability to just soul charge from your drop zone, it makes the deck very, very, very strong. And then also we have Stride that's helped it even greater. Although the new Genesis Stride quote unquote boss unit is not that great. But that's another video for another time. The last deck would be Duos. So Duos got a lot of new support in their clan booster. But they also got G units. But I feel like the Duo deck will be the stronger one, simply because there are more options and there are more ways to play the deck. A unit that's taken people by storm is Numel. Numel. We're gonna call it Numel now. Yes, like the Pokemon. That unit's very, very strong, allowing you to pretty much get multiple copies of cards in your hand, abusing your one return to hand draw cards, letting you draw a bunch of cards, so you can pretty much be like, well, it doesn't really matter how many cards you have, how many times you attack me. I'm just gonna have enough hand to block everything. Also, Ria is still a very, very strong unit, especially when you break ride it, simply because you can get many, many attacks in. Mirror's also gotten some support as well, in the form of basically like an Alk clone, sort of, where you can basically keep break riding every turn. And also, Olivia, who is like the generic like Persona Flipper card, is also very, very strong. Gaining critical, giving the center line quite a lot of pressure, and also returning everything to your hand in order to get more effects off is always really, really strong. But yeah, overall, I feel like this format's gonna be interesting. It's gonna be it's gonna be a really interesting format. There's gonna be a lot of not new really G-Set 4 and the Bermuda deck really took it to the next level with the Bermuda's getting a lot of support and G-Set 4, Ronculus deck getting support, and also the Shadow Paladin deck getting support. But yeah, we'll see what the new format brings. Hopefully it'll be better, since Phantom Blast Diablo has kind of been tearing everyone up. But yeah, anyway, this has been Natsu /Cube of Team Fairy Tail, signing out.